Let me get my camera straight.
Okay. And let me make sure that's going. Yeah, the recording is going. Okay, so does that seem comfortable?
Sure.
Good. All right, so the title that I have for you is Director, Emergency Management and Enterprise Resilience at New York University Langone Health Center and former Deputy Commissioner of the New York City Office of Emergency Management. Is that how you want to be introduced or something else?
Yeah, I mean that's a long title. I'm the AVP. I'm the Assistant Vice President, but it's not. It's already a long title, so director is just as good.
Okay, well, why don't I go Assistant Vice President, Emergency Management, and then we'll take it from there.
Good.
Okay, good. All right, I'll always like to check it before I start. Okay, so I'm going to take like a 5-second pause, and then we can get into it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tim Carney with the All Hazards Consortium, and joining me today is Kelly McKinney, who's the Assistant Vice President of Emergency Management and Enterprise Resilience at New York University Langone Health Center, and former Deputy Commissioner of the New York City Office of Emergency Management. Kelly, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Tim. It's great to be here.
So, Kelly, how did you first hear about the consortium?
You know, I'm an old timer. I've known Tom Moran for about a decade now. And when I was at the New York City Office of Emergency Management, we were part of a FEMA program called the RCPG, which is the Regional Catastrophic Planning Grant Program. And that was I think, a very important program that forced us to collaborate regionally. Not only, when I was Deputy Commissioner in New York City, most of the people I dealt with thought New York City was all there was, that the world really ended at the Bronx border, right? It was just like a big cliff. And so, but working with the state of New Jersey was a tremendous experience, working with Nassau County, Suffolk County, Westchester County, and then even beyond that, starting to work with the Mid-Atlantic region. And that's really how I got to know the All Hazards Consortium, working with the National Capital Region, working with Tom Moran and Chris Geldard and those sort of those legends in the business.
So was there a particular event or incident where suddenly the consortium became useful in terms of helping you guys as you were looking at how you were going to respond to something?
Hurricane Sandy was a big one. It was a huge incident for us, obviously, right? And we had trained for that and planned for that for many years. When it happened, the thing that really stood out for us was this coming together of the nation to support the affected areas, and that's a huge part of major disasters. Is we were getting emergency power generators from Washington State. We were getting power crews from California and Arizona, and so crossing those state lines and all the issues around that. The All Hazards Consortium and the SICE working group, all of the different coordinating bodies that the All Hazards Consortium put together really solved a lot of problems that allowed those assets to flow into our area, not just New York, but New Jersey and all of the affected areas. So that's really where the benefit became apparent to me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I remember talking with the folks at NYU Langone after Sandy. And of course, all 3 hospitals in Manhattan were sitting right off the East River, and all of them got dramatically impacted by Sandy directly. And I can understand why coming out of that circumstance, whole region, because you don't know when you're going to have something that's going to be that impactful again. But I know that the University Health Center's made a lot of changes to their infrastructure and other things to try and avoid those problems post Sandy. So what are the things that you would, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of, as you said, we're right on the East River where I'm sitting right now, and right at 34th Street in Manhattan. And the East River came into the hospital, which is never a good thing. So we evacuated Tisch Hospital of 300 plus patients throughout the night. But since then, there's been so much work done to harden that infrastructure. We have a unified flood protection system around the campus. We call this the super block. It's got, it's got 750 beds, but it's got, 300 plus, research labs. It's got School of Medicine. It's got a full energy building. We have a whole cogen facility that can power every plug. So lots of mitigation work done in the aftermath of that. And of course, now that we spent all that money and hardened the target, the next job will be completely different. That's just the way the world works.
Well, and this is part of why I think the consortium continuing to do what it does is important, because I think what it's really about is keeping those relationships together in between events, rather than just thinking you can call them together when you need them. Because it's about trust, isn't it, Kelly?
Yeah, Tim, that's it. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I don't think people understand how important that is, that those groups be together. And you talk about those incidents together. And then that's the same group that you bring together in the job to work the job. And we do that here. We have our planning teams, and we train and we exercise, and we tell them, your phone is going to ring at 2:00 in the morning should this ever happen. And now we're all going to be on the team working the job. And that's really how you get it done. It's not really rocket science, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be that common. A lot of people, they think, oh, let's bring this group together. Let's write a plan. You write a plan, you put it on a shelf, everybody goes away. 2 years later, it's as if it never happened. You have to keep that momentum going. You have to keep those lines of communication open and warm.
Well, I think the other thing that has been apparent to me is being able to work cross-sector. Because again, you mentioned it before with Sandy, that one of the biggest things is every emergency manager will say is, if you get my power back up and running, you've solved 80% of my problems. But without power, I'm in trouble here. And I think it's just what the consortium has done, I think, very effectively, is brought these different segments together and had each one of them bring their problems, their use cases to the entire group. Because many times the solution for one segment actually is residing someplace else, and they just don't know it.
Yeah, that's right. And those use cases, use case is a Tom Moranism, but it's really, a use case for me. We have a number of colorful terms for use cases. The standard term for use case is a problem. My boss used to call them leaky bags. In the military, they call them SHIT grenades.
Yeah.
And they're just basically problems, and that need to be solved and can't be solved within one silo. You need these cross silo teams. Because as you said, Tim, I mean, sometimes the problem is mine, but the solution is somewhere else. And so if that person's in the room with me, and that's the only way to solve it. You can't solve it with 3 different conversations with those people. You have to put them all in the same conversation. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, I think at one point we were having a meeting with the consortium and its board and some other sectors and somebody said, we're all in the same storm. We better get in the same boat. And I think that's been the problem largely, is everybody knows they're in the same storm, but they don't want to get in the same boat. And I think one of the things that's been important about the consortium is getting people to leave some of the turf at the door and realize that, hey, we are in this boat, we better be pulling in the same direction. So is there anything else that I should have asked you about in terms of how people should look at the consortium or why it's good to get involved that I didn't ask you about?
Well, I just want to react to the last thing you said, because I think it's so important. You said that, that turf issue, and leave those egos at the door and come together. And, that's what I think the All Hazards Consortium does, better than anyone. The Fleet Working Group and all of these groups that they bring together. I would just say my last thought is, this idea of being in the same boat. over the last 100 years, it's hard to point to issues where the whole nation was in the same boat. Maybe a world war, World War II or something like that. But I think in 2020 we were all in the same boat with this coronavirus pandemic, but we didn't feel like we were in the same boat, and that's a coordination problem. I think it's easier said than done, but had we come together around a pandemic scenario as a nation 5 years ago and 4 years ago and 3 years ago, we would feel more in the same boat now. And I think those solutions would have been more apparent. I think it would have felt more as if we had our arms around the job, and that's coordination. And that's like what I think the All Hazards Consortium does better than anyone.
Well, I think the other thing, Kelly, that ties into that is we're having to learn whole new ways to coordinate because we're all having to coordinate virtually.
Right.
And in some ways that's more difficult, but in some ways it's easier as well.
Yeah.
And some of this is just as we come through it, we always learn lessons. And I think one of the things I really like about the consortium is once we get out of the immediate problem, we identified 10 more problems that we should have solved before that. And then we can take a look at them and say, okay, which of these is solvable and which one should we tackle? And I think that's got to be part of the ongoing thinking, is that just if something ends, it doesn't really end, because there's something else coming down the pike that we should have learned a lesson from.
Yeah, when when I was at OEM, we used to call that the onion. You just peel that onion. There's another layer, and the truth is, we gotta always be peeling that onion. It's never done. You just gotta it's just a continual process. It never stops. And but the more you do it, the better those outcomes are. It's really just about improving outcomes in the job, and that's what I think. That's the goal.
Absolutely. Kelly, thanks for taking the time. This has been really good. I've enjoyed it. And I think you shared some things here that I think a lot of our audience will relate to. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
You take care. And we're out. Kelly, that was great. Thanks so much. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. And
yeah, well, it's when you get a like-minded, conversationalist. I can tell you've been doing this a while, so it is interesting. I just got off a meeting with a couple of my young team members who don't have that same, and it was a little more frustrating. So I feel like I was happy with this one because I think what I learned here, Tim, is that I'm not crazy. That was the important part, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny because we all ask ourselves that question about 20 times a day, but I was very fortunate. Years ago, I launched a magazine called Emergency Management, and I was the publisher of that magazine I was a publisher of that for its beginning, for its first 3 or 4 years.
Oh, fantastic. And what was it, bought by GovTech or something like that? Is that?
Yeah, they went, actually, I think they're there, but what's happened was that whole industry just dissolved. You couldn't print 40,000 copies of anything anymore and get them out.
Right.
So I think they've basically gone pretty much virtual at this point, which we're all having to do.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting because that's what introduced me to the consortium. Somebody introduced me to Tom, and unfortunately, the moment you get introduced to Tom, you have a new job whether you know it or not. He doesn't let go of anybody that's got any utility whatsoever.
That's right.
So I've been supporting him
to the cause, right?
Yeah, I started with him in 2005, and been doing pro bono work as well as paid work. I'm doing all of their strategic communications and annual plan and sponsorship programs, whatever else he can rope me into. So rather than retiring, I get to work with a lot of the people that I really am impressed with, because there's everybody in this that it's a self-selective group of people that are willing to put the time and effort in to make things better for that next generation of people.
Yeah.
And the consortium is actually setting up an internship program to try and bring people in and get them engaged and educated so that your young staffers will pick up some of those lessons learned without having to learn them, the hard way. So we'll see how it goes, but this is why I stay involved.
Well, you're giving back,
really
and that's a great thing because you could go off into the distance and you could go lay on a beach somewhere but this is a really good good gift, I think, that you're giving because we there's nothing we need more than this, right? Is this kind of knowledge, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think the other big piece of this that the consortium has really done well with is when there's a change of administrations, a large number of the people, whether it's at the federal or state or county or local level, are gone. And that institutional knowledge is gone. And until they get tapped into the network, and I think the consortium has been very smart to get a lot of the guys that have retired and say, you can't retire. We're not done with you yet. You're now running a working group, or you're now doing this. And they're glad to give back because this has been their mission for their careers.
Yeah.
So it's been great. Yeah, I really like it.
If you're not doing it, if you're not forced to do it 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's a little better, right? It's
yeah.
So, well, Tim, great to meet you. I actually got to jump to I'm over schedule.
No
I got
problem.
an interview I'm going to. So thanks for everything. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you. You take care, Kelly.
All right.